I mean, they do subtitles,
Yeah,
but I'm like,
right.
oh my God, this is so.
Who knew? Check
Yeah.
that out. Okay.
And a vote plus. Yeah, double vote.
Good evening, everyone. I will now call our June 10th, 2025 regular meeting of the Board of Directors to order. On behalf of the entire board, thank you to those attending in person, joining us over Zoom, and those staying engaged by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they need to fill out a form in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table to my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we move into our agenda, I would like to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, Superintendent Degner, Directors Icestone, Eastham, and Williams. I'm President Malone. To my left, Vice President Abraham, Director Lingo, and Board Secretary Coven. And that takes us to community comment, and I do not have any, so okay, so I will give us some time. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who have the assistance of an interpreter. Speakers' time, hopefully, will be displayed above Board Secretary Coven. If not, I will try to give you a warning when you're approaching 30 seconds. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and/or referred to law enforcement. And with that, our first commenter is Pastor Dole. I
Dear
can't,
Wiley Doyle.
okay,
Yes.
welcome.
Good evening, Board, Superintendent. I guess the best way I can say this is literacy is everything. 3 days ago at the kickoff in Cedar Rapids for the Summer Learning Challenge, board members for the Cedar Rapids Community School District noted the absence of African American families, particularly males. So I reminded them, as I'm reminding you this evening, is it literally starts at birth. So what I handed Ms. Colvin to hand to for eventually the superintendent is the Chicago Public Schools mandated plan for African American student advancement. Yes, the Chicago Public Schools has their own challenges, but for me as a K through 12 product of the Chicago Public Schools, when literacy was important, every year you take in individuals, not just from District 299 in Chicago, but other districts that are not as advanced as the Iowa City Community School District. And then you wonder after a while why African American males are not engaged. Again, it didn't start at K, it started at B, birth. So, again, as a reminder, this is me at 19. As a United States Marine Corps veteran, literacy works. We're the same Marines who were sent in today. Regardless of what you think politically, we're the first to fight because we're prepared. My conversations with both Senator Ernst and Senator Grassley as relates to this school district, not from a DEI, but from a PRE, PARED. I'm not Aquila. Think about it. If you've seen the movie, then you'd understand what I just meant. When you are addicted to academics, it works in the end. So as you're preparing for the 2005-2006 academic year, the reason why I submitted that plan is something to be thinking about as you are moving into your new building. Where do African American boys fit? Something to think about in terms of your engagement, not with other teachers who are taking care of their own children, but to their mothers. See, I'd like to end on that part because we haven't seen each other in a while because elder care took my attention since the last time some of us in this room have seen one another. My mother was a virgin, raised Christian, married at 25, and decided to give up her University of Chicago extensive education to be a mother. So for her children who all are degreed and all understand that literacy is everything, my mother made a transition last September, and I say this with the utmost of humility, that it works when you work it. So this upcoming school year, when you have an intake of families who are not only leaving Chicago, but other school districts and coming here, again, ask yourself, where's the mother? And where's her responsibility? Because again, it works. if it
Thank
works.
you. Before we
God
move
bless.
on to the next commenter, I'm getting messages that the Zoom link is telling folks that the meeting hasn't started yet.
Start without the data name.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker will be Jackson Edens. It starts once you start talking.
Perfect. Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Superintendent. My name is Jackson Edens, and I'm a local resident here. I'm a founder of Edens Success Solutions for AI Consulting. I'm here tonight because we're at a really critical point in education. AI is not a distant reality. It's here, and it's now. And when you give your students homework and when you give them different projects, they're going to use it whether you like it or not. And we're at that point in the education where we need to begin implementing it into the curriculum. And that's why I'm here speaking today, is to create the start of that conversation. See, it's in students' hands right now. Tools like ChatGPT are right there for their homework, and it's there as a creative partner, but we need to be using it to inspire critical thought, desired thinking, and to still allow problem solving. See, at the same time, the job market right now is still demanding new AI tools. Each time it's going to keep asking more and more of that as a skill set. And if students don't begin practicing that, we're being reactive and not proactive. And when they get to the job market, they're not going to have the skills that are going to be required of them when they graduate. So this is where we can implement multiple different experiments into the, or not experiments, it's not the correct word, but multiple different forms of education into the curriculum, such as having them do the science lab and then throwing it into the AI tool with the data and having it form graphs and predict different data out of what they have provided. Or you could create art projects and have them manipulate that and use that with different art tools that they'll use in marketing. See, we need to be adapting with these different AI tools, because I know it sounds like a huge task, but what's going to happen is they're going to go to the job market. And when they do that, they're going to be far beyond behind. And then they're going to have to play catch up, and it's not going to be the greatest for them. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. That concludes community comment, and next on the agenda is the approval for tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve the agenda for tonight.
Seconded.
Thank you. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. Are there any items that directors would like to pull?
Would like to pull Center for Innovation 2025 Dream Accelerator.
Okay. And I would like to pull from the personnel agenda, the agenda exhibit wages. Can I just pull that part one, or do I have to pull all of it? I have to pull the whole thing?
Yep.
Because we're not voting on that.
Okay, I have to pull the whole thing. Thank you. Are there any other items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda minus those two items?
Motion to approve the agenda minus those two items.
Second.
Right, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Okay, next up is the items pulled from the consent agenda. I believe the personnel agenda was first in the order. So the only reason why I had to pull that is because I usually abstain from voting because of a personal relationship that I have with someone listed on that. So that's it. There's,
Okay. I move to approve the personnel agenda.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Just a second. Not as easy to move as it was in the first. All right, online voting is open.
Thank you.
All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Istone, Lingo, and Williams voting yea, and Malone abstaining.
Thank you. Next up is the Center for Innovation 2025 Dream Accelerator that was pulled by Director Lingo.
No comments, just want to vote.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve this item.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven ready to vote.
I'm trying to find what item number it is.
I got distracted.
It's 13, it's the
Thank
entire
you.
appendix 9.
So for those watching at home, this is new platform that we're using. And so it's not still, it still has some little kinks and tweaks needed.
I'm watching it, it doesn't look fun.
No.
All right, online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Istone, Malone, and Williams voting yea, and Lingo voting nay.
Thank you. Next up is our public hearing for tonight, the 2025 Northwest Middle School retaining wall, and Vice President Abraham. Told you all fun.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the 2025 Northwest Middle School retaining wall project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on May 27, 2025. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 28, 2025. The district will receive bids on this project at 10 a.m. July 10, 2025 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on May 28, 2025. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
Thank you, Vice President Abraham. I will close. Oh, sorry. You can come up to the microphone.
Again, for the record, Pastor Doyle, United States Marine Corps veteran. I'd like to know the requirements that were put forth by whom the firm that will be constructing the wall. By Iowa law, veteran participation, meaning employment and engagement, particularly those who have had trouble. And when I say trouble, both covered by the Register, Gazette, Quad City Times, and Waterloo Courier, as relates to engagement for productive employment. So to boil that down, your contract has to reflect veteran engagement and employment per Iowa law. So just wanted to bring that to your attention, because when you freedoms that you want, you come to those who served first. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is our policy review. Director Williams, since you chair that committee, would you like to reiterate some of the highlights we'll be focusing on in our action items?
Yep, we've got 4 policies that we are voting on tonight. Numbers 1, 2, and 4 on the agenda, the 800, 900, and 704.4 were primarily address updates, title updates, nothing super substantive. We covered those at the last meeting. Didn't seem that there was a lot of questions about that. Policy number 3 on the agenda is 210.2, which adjusts our regular meeting schedule to eliminate the second meeting in June, the first meeting in July, and the second meeting in November. And we briefly talked about it at our last meeting. I didn't hear any additional, I didn't receive any additional feedback from any of the directors since that last meeting. So we're going to vote on those 4 tonight.
Great. Thank you, Director Williams. Were there any additional comments from other members of Policy and Governance or other directors? No. Okay, hearing none, that takes us to our discussion items for tonight. FMP or Facility Master Plan 2.3. Thank you to thank you to the team for loading all the other FMPs and to Dwayne for printing them out and putting them on the wall for us. With that, I will turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Ramey.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. We are pleased to have the FMP 2.3 on the agenda for a vote later this evening. However, at the request of the board at our last meeting, we did go ahead and reproduce the FMP projects since FMP inception several years ago, starting at 1.0. And as President Malone pointed out, we do have those across the back of the room. And for those that are at home, they're also attached in to the agenda. We don't have a formal presentation this evening to give you a little bit of what has transpired since we were here 2 weeks ago. We've had a couple of meetings with representatives from our schools administration and our athletic directors, who I thank for being here this evening, as well as took feedback from board members and any feedback that we have gotten. We did make one substantial change to what we shared with you a couple weeks ago, which was moving forward the main theater project at West High. That was something that, of course, came across in the fine arts study about the needs in that area for fine arts at West, and Dwayne was able to work his jigsaw puzzle magic and move that forward without disrupting much of the other work. With that, I would open it to any questions or discussion from the board.
Directors, the floor is open.
I'd just like to ask Chase, do the athletic directors have anything they would like to say or point out to the board at this point, or either directly or from them or through you or the superintendent?
Sure. I think they'd like us to express their deep gratitude and their thanks for the board's support. They know that this is something that the board's taken seriously and is considered, and also that the board has seen the value in our co and extracurricular activities, just like our athletic directors do. And so they really appreciate that while maybe they wanted to see some of these things earlier in 1.0, they do understand that we take care of our needs inside the classroom and then we expand to the whole child. But they're very thankful that we have decided to move these projects forward for the benefit and the support of everyone. And numerous times they've expressed just their gratitude to the board and your willingness to undertake these projects and to support the work that they're doing for our students.
Thanks very much, and if I might continue, President Malone. I wonder if you might make some comments or make some statements about the value of athletic participation in all kinds of sports events or athletic events to students' overall educational experience in the district.
Absolutely. I mean, we know that there's a value on this, Director Eastham. I don't have any of the research studies in front of me, but the research is plentiful about the heightened engagement of individuals that feel a sense of belonging through extracurricular activities, athletics, the arts, clubs. And so we know that these enhance, the student experience, and they find that connection to their peers, to adults, to the school itself. And so it's a way to make sure that kids, or it gives another avenue for kids to be connected to what we're doing in the classroom. And so we know there's that synergy that is able to enhance those experiences. And as I said earlier, we want to take care of the entire child. That's one of the guiding principles as we looked at FNP 2.0. It's one of the things we look about at Portrait of a Graduate is preparing our students to be lifelong learners, global citizens in all aspects, not just academically. And so there is a significant tie between student performance both inside and outside the classroom. I know Director Abraham is very well versed in this from her time at as a high school administrator. Director Williams sees it with her students that participate in mock trial, and so how that connection to outside activities enhances what they're doing inside the classroom. I don't want to put them on the spot, but Lucas, do you want to add anything to that?
I was trying to do some quick math here. What we asked the administrators, both building principals as well as the ADs from each of the schools do as a participation numbers from both fine arts and athletics. While this encompasses students that are involved in multiple activities, 6,000 students participated in activities this year. So again, many of them were involved in more than one, but 6,000 students participating in both athletics and fine arts is extremely, it's overwhelming. And then I think when we talked about the engagement of students, engagement then leads to better attendance. So as we start talking through all these things that happen, they happen for a reason. These are many of the reasons why students want to come to school. And then the more we keep them engaged with those extracurriculars, we get them there during the day and they're successful there as well.
I'd like to thank both of you and everyone for their comments. And just for the board, I just want to say that what's been said very much reflects my own views now, which have evolved over time. So since I was not an athletic person in grade school or high school, but now I think I do come to appreciate the importance of athletic opportunities for many, many students in the district. Thank you.
I'll just piggyback on that sentiment. We received not a lot of feedback, but some feedback in the past couple weeks or so that was kind of criticizing the decision to put money towards the athletic facilities. And I found it odd. It wasn't the money in general because we didn't get that feedback on the fine arts projects. But I think that there's this sense by some members of the community that athletics aren't worth investing in. And I just could not disagree more. I think they probably get a bad rap. But in addition to, the things that you all identified, it teaches it teaches our kids these lifelong skills of being a team, working with people that you may have different viewpoints with, but you still have to get together to get a goal done. It teaches them really important lifelong, healthy habits of how to exercise and take care of your body. That are things that those kids will be able to take with them into adulthood. In terms of student engagement, it also, our athletes are required to make minimum grades in their classes. It keeps them engaged in the classroom. Like you said, they have to attend school, and so it keeps them as really productive students. And so these are all just huge benefits that also our fine arts students and our other extracurricular activities give our students, but for some reason the criticism that is directed by some people in the community is just towards athletics. And I think that's really unfair when you look at the opportunities that these provide our kids. And, this is money that's supposed to be used to improve our buildings and facilities. And our athletic facilities are part of our buildings and facilities. And I think that the beauty of FNP 2.3 is that it really touches both our fine arts and extracurriculars and our athletics. And so I'm really excited to vote in favor for this plan later today.
Are there any? Go
Yeah,
ahead,
I just-
Dr. Eystone.
I appreciate having the timeline on here because it's a nice reminder because it started back when I was on the board the last time. In April of 2022, we approved the entire budget for the FNP 2.0, right? That had, it looks like $270 million as part of it, right? And so up to this point, we have spent, a good chunk of that on a lot of different things, right? We touched our elementaries, we've touched our middle schools, we've touched other parts of our high schools. We've done a lot of the academic needs for our facilities, and it's simply the time for our fine arts and our athletics. It's their turn. And I made the point that we need to still look at long-term as we get through this phase. How do we circle back? Do we go back to looking at our elementaries and what they might need and whatnot? But it's just the third part, I guess, of the FME 2.0 that we already did, and it's time to do that. And so I appreciate the context here in this timeline, and I think it's a nice blend of our fine arts and our athletics. I think we've had a history in this district of pitting those two against each other at times. Unfortunately, I'm not really sure why it can't be and. I'm a big proponent of the culture of and, like we can support both those things, and this plan does that, so I appreciate it.
Any other directors?
Just have a couple questions. Because I've already had someone ask this, what's the purpose of the $1 million for road reconstruction around Liberty High School?
So based on where we are looking at the plan right now, the expansion for the fine arts at Liberty would most likely take place over the access emergency management road that goes behind the school. So we're going to have to move that road in order to build the fine arts expansion on the backside of Liberty High School.
Okay. When we discussed the commission of the fine arts study in the fall, there was a discussion of equity and changes, equity and fine arts in the district. It was both, like we talked about having an equity mindset on it. Could you care to comment on how equity figured into the decisions between the three buildings? It's just something that I thought about afterwards, after the last one.
Sure. We talk often about equity of opportunity, equity of spaces, and that obviously equal doesn't mean equitable as we look at our different campuses. And that's one reason we engaged a firm outside to take a look at our spaces and how they best serve the variety of students that we serve in the school district. It's why we spent time working with our administrators and our teachers that serve our students on a daily basis that do that work. And so we believe that we had that focus throughout the study, throughout the feedback sessions we had with our different schools, and as we put the plan together, so that we could keep that notion of providing opportunity for all at all three of our buildings, all of our buildings, but here primarily as we look at the fine arts additions and the athletic additions at the high schools across our three feeder patterns in the district.
Then, since this will be a question, we kind of touched on it a little bit already. When the shovels hit the ground and people start seeing shovels over at West High School and not as many shovels at the other two high schools, that the schedule is for West to have their field house and theater upgrade by winter 27-28 on the former and summer 27 on the latter. Cities, respectively, spring 28 and summer 29, Liberty summer 28 and summer 30. How would you explain that to the community?
Well, I think first it's a celebration, right? You just rolled off 4 years, and in 4 years, we're going to upgrade our athletics and our fine arts across all of our feeder patterns. And given where we were back in 2012 to where we're going to be in 2030, I think it's a tremendous accomplishment and a tremendous thank you to our broader community for their support of the whole child, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. And so I think it's a celebration that we're going to be able to do that work. Obviously throughout this process, and Dwayne gets tremendous credit for this, his ability to look at the district as a whole and also to balance the work from a financial standpoint, but from a feeder pattern standpoint, as we try to look at the work across the district and fit all those pieces together. And Director Eystone, I appreciate what you said. It's not just about this specific piece. It's about where we started in 1.0 and who we did early projects here, and then who was in the middle, and then who was at the end, and there has to be a little circular in that. The other part about it is, in some ways, the shovels have already hit the ground, right? We've already started work on baseball and softball at City High, and so by the time we get to some of those projects at West, City will already have baseball and softball. City will already have their upgrades to their main theater, and so we have tried to take into account what are some of those immediate needs, some of those things that needed to get done at Ofsted, but then also looking at some of those larger projects like at the theater over at West. And so it's a complicated tapestry of projects to put together, but we're confident in the plan that Dwayne has laid out. And yes, for a lot of reasons we've talked about, we couldn't do necessarily all 3 field houses at exactly the same time, but given the different terrain of the campuses and the needs, we're still on pace to open all 3 within a same 3 to 6 month window, which I think again is a credit to how the plan was put together. So it's a lot of work in a short amount of time, but we have full confidence in our teams to be able to accomplish it.
Thank you, Chase, for those answers. Sure. Since this is the discussion section, I figure I'd say my words now instead of saving them for later. First, I was reminded yesterday that I should have a statement for the way that I'm going to vote, just so people understand how I'm going to vote tonight. First, I appreciate the planning, collaboration, thoughtfulness that have gone into the development of the facilities master plan by everybody, whether it was starting with 1.0 all the way up to now. I recognize reasonable people may reach different conclusions based on the information that's given and the perspectives available to them, and I will remain a no vote for this plan. I'd like to share my reasoning. I'll reiterate that as I did at the last meeting, had I known that the plan would leverage SAVE funding out to 2047 back last August, I would have raised my red flags then. But I learned that a month ago. Before joining the board, as many people I would assume, I was largely unaware of the weight of facilities decisions. I quickly learned of the weight within the first 4 months when I was part of the decisions to close Hills Elementary. Within the next 9 months, we were discussing significant restructuring of our elementary schools. Having these kinds of experiences to start me off has made me very cautious about long-term facilities planning. And in 2013, we see over there was the jump start. There was an enrollment report saying that there's 15,372 students by 2023. 2015, it showed 16,317 students. But since then, we've built capacity for over 21,000 students and a total capacity of more than 28,000 students. After closing, and that's even after closing the school. Despite enrollment projections from 2020 and 2022, early 2023, indicating stagnant or declining enrollment, we continue to build capacity. Again, these are the kinds of experiences when I learn about these things that give me pause to say, why the rush? In the background, there's a broader concern about the wider financial landscape that we face as a state and the nation. The original facilities master plan and the 2022 update were developed under a very different state funding environment. There was a time that this was a time where the state provided a backfill to its commercial property tax revenue, maintained a more balanced and less regressive tax structure. And on top of that, we all enjoyed a broader bipartisan support for public education. Iowa faces a $900 million budget deficit. While there's real potential for state tax revenue or state level tax reforms that will hurt SAVE as a reliable funding source, property taxes will be reformed next session. We know that, and that will result in less PEPAL funding. After property taxes, they have told us that sales tax is next. Last week, the DOJ committee talked about consolidating rural schools, which would mean less school funding. Since our last meeting, I've had additional conversations with people that have a deeper understanding of the state's fiscal outlook and potential upcoming tax reforms. The conversations only reinforce my opinions. Historically, the SAVE revenue has been only spent 10 to 15 years in the future. Committing SAVE funding to 2047 is what being proposed right now is a different level of risk. I look at projects in front of me and say, how confident am I that these are the needs that we will face over the next 22 to 23 years? And I have a concern with not just the projects in front of me today, but a concern for the flexibility of future boards, administrators, and most importantly, the students and families that come and use our school district. I have a firm understanding that politically, that the moment that something hits ground, one of the $5 million or $12 million projects, we have to complete them at all high schools, right? Despite whether there's a change in cost, it's only fair. If we start by building at West, it's only fair that City and Liberty experience the same things for their buildings. So once the ground is broken, flexibility becomes limited as the flexibility of future boards. And I will continue to advocate the slowing down of this process. Finally, I absolutely support extracurricular and co-curricular programming, and have personally studied their value. I'm published on this. And I also understand from the work of Yale economist Barbara Biasi that facility investments in HVAC, STEM, and STEM building and infrastructure, safety classrooms tend to have the greatest positive impact on student academic achievement. whereas athletics-focused investments are more closely tied to local property value increases. Through correspondence, because I asked her, hey, what does this mean for enrollment? She responded to me, and this is district email that anybody can read, that none of the investments through these type of plans result in increased enrollment. But as I wrote on the investment for the indoor pool in Coralville, my opinion can be changed when a need-based argument shows that a need will be met. With full respect to those that built and worked on these plans in the past and the present, and my colleagues that here that do support the plan, I'm sorry, but I can't support the FMP as it's currently proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Linko. Any other comments? I just want to say thank you for the adjustment to have the playgrounds for outdoor classrooms throughout the plan and starting early. And also thank you to our athletic directors for being here with us tonight, showing your support for the plan. As Deputy Superintendent Ramey and my fellow directors have mentioned, it is important for us to support the whole child and the thousands of children that participate in our activities throughout all of our buildings. So I am looking forward to seeing a lot of these renovations take place as we move forward. With that,
If you don't,
oh, go ahead.
it's good. Can I make another comment, please?
Yes, you can, Director Eastham.
Thank you very much, President Malone. I'm also going to support this Facility Master Plan 2.3 with a great deal of confidence that the future is something that we can master when we get to the future. I have learned, I think, in my time on this board that trying to do what might happen in 20 years now is not a good governance policy, at least in my mind anyway. We have requests that have been vetted by the staff, all the principals that are involved in these decisions, as well as all the athletic directors and many other staff members who are very knowledgeable about what the district needs now and in the near term. So I'm more than happy to support this, this addressing the issues we have in front of us now, and I have a lot of confidence that boards 20 years from now will be able to address the issues that confront them.
Thank you, Director Eastham. I'm sorry, we only take community comment at the beginning of our meeting, so I don't know if you can have a seat.
If you don't mind.
No, we only take community comment at the beginning of the meeting. You can write a note if you need to pass information to our board secretary. Thank you.
I had a question
Next up is
regarding
our
the protocol of the
presentation
meeting.
for the quarterly financial report.
All right, I'll just fill a little room here. So Adam is here to deliver our quarterly financial report. I think a key takeaway follows the agreements you guys approved at our last meeting with our different bargaining groups and some of the assumptions that are built into our budget planning model here. So I'm excited to have Adam update you on that trajectory, and any questions you have about those assumptions, he'd be, of course, happy to answer.
All right, thank you very much, and happy to be here to present this information. As always, I'm not going to go through all of this in great detail, but there are a handful of things I do want to highlight. I doubt that there's anything that probably jumps out as a huge shock, but hopefully I'll address a few things that you might have noticed as differences from one quarter to the next or year to year, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to go ahead and start on this page of the report, which shows each of the funds with receipts to date, disbursements to date, and then the ending balances. I do want to highlight a few individual funds just to talk about them in a little bit more depth. But one thing, I actually got a question earlier today, not from a board member, but from somebody else, and it made me realize I've never really addressed this. So the question was why receipts on quarterly reports tend to lag as a percentage of budget the expenditures, and they almost always do. And the primary reason for that is that this is cash basis reporting. And so when we have an expenditure, payroll goes out, that gets recorded the instant that it gets paid and gets recorded to that month. When we receive revenues, as a public entity, frequently we are receiving revenues that are coming in the form of reimbursements, so nutrition reimbursements, for example. And so those are coming back to us after we've made a request. And so we may make the request in March, but we're not going to receive those funds until April or May. And so that's a real key for kind of explaining that difference between revenues and expenditures. Expenditures are simply recorded more quickly. So I wanted to highlight that a little bit. Handful of other things I do want to talk about. Looking through the ending balances here for quarter three, for the most part, they are pretty much exactly where I had expected them to be. A couple that I do want to call out. One is the two negatives that you might see. So capital projects general obligation, that's actually one that's going to go down to 0 at the end of this year. And so in the next report, that'll show as 0 as an ending balance with some reclass to PEPAL and SAVE. And that's something that was planned. So that one will go to 0 at the end of the year here. And then the other one is down at the bottom, and that's the school-based health clinics fund. That's actually the fund that funds our Healthy Kids clinics. And that's something that we operate as a district and we incur the expenses for. But we make a request to the Community Foundation of Johnson County to provide a disbursement from their endowment that will happen during the current quarter that we're in right now. And so that one will be positive by the end of the year. And basically we just make a request to cover our costs for the year. So that comes in at that point. So I kind of wanted to highlight those two negative numbers just to make sure that you're aware of those. A couple of the others I do want to talk a little bit about, SAVE and PEPAL, relevant in terms of your discussion related to facilities master plan. And you can see those Q3 ending balances in SAVE of about $12 million, PEPAL about $17.2 million. Those won't be quite that high at the end of the year, although SAVE will probably be in the ballpark of that. PEPAL will come down a little bit because we have some backloaded spending as we get into the summer and projects that really kind of pick up in June. But both of those are fairly healthy funds. So as we look at where those funds are at, as we approach, as we move into the final quarter of the year here, that's something that I do want to highlight. And then the other one that I do want to highlight is our management fund, mostly because this has been the subject of discussion at the state level. There was a discussion about limiting management fund growth to 180% of a rolling 5-year or 3-year average of expenditures. You can see that right now we have that $3.5 million balance. One of the potential rules in future years will be the balance that you can carry. That'll actually come down quite a bit, mostly with a transfer to our health insurance fund to cover retiree health expenditures during the end of the year. So I generally don't spend a lot of time talking about some of those funds, so I wanted to go into a little detail just so that you kind of understood where they're at and where they're headed from here. Going into these familiar slides here, this one is revenues by month. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail. This is general fund revenue, I should clarify, by month with prior year on the top and then current year down below. You can see in our chart here the current year compared to prior year that we're similar. We do expect that we will end up higher in our current year revenue than we were last year. So we expect that we'll end up with that current year line a little bit up. It's been above and below kind of throughout the year. And that just relates to timing of when we've made claims for things like title funds and that sort of thing. And then down here, this is the expenditures by month. Again, nothing jumps out as really shocking to me on this. There are a handful of things I do want to highlight. One of them is that we had a mistake on our Q2 report, and that is in the second to last item line down under expenditures, the AEA support line. We simply didn't have that there. AEA support is a funny one because it's not money we actually receive and it's not money we actually spend. It's kind of a theoretical booking that happens. And so that $489,000 per month actually did drive the expenditure amount up a little bit. It also drove the revenue amount up by the exact same amount and the authority amount up by the same amount. So really the net effect of that is 0. But I wanted to highlight it because it is a $4.4 million change from the previous one as you look across the first 3 quarters. You can see that our expenditures are higher as we projected that they would be. We knew that we were going to have some expenditure growth in this year compared to last year with our settlements, with our associations and that sort of thing. But they're right in line with what we expected them to be. The difference between these has actually been shrinking throughout the year, and there are a couple of reasons for that, but I expect that it's going to end right around or just below 4% expenditure growth, probably closer to 3.75, in part because we had some front-loaded costs that drove some of this gap as it started at the beginning of the year. And then we also had in previous years a roughly $1 million transfer to the activities fund that happened out of the general fund every year. That's no longer something that we do. That's based upon moving transportation costs into the general fund, which are showing up in the form of, this gap happening here. So again, all of that to say, moving in our cash position, which I won't go into a huge amount of detail, is pretty solid. It's pretty much where we would expect it to be in terms of cash and investments. And then kind of the one number that has been our focus for years is this one right here. It is this unspent authorized budget amount. So for fiscal year 25, that is $6.9 million. That's down a little bit from our Q2 projection. And so that's something to watch. I do think that we're being very conservative. We and the way that our forecast tool is working is being very conservative in terms of how this is being projected. And the primary reason for that is that when we look at the growth in our expenditures, where it's been above budgeted amounts, it's been almost entirely within our special education program and our English language learner program, both of which, when all is said and done, will have a net zero effect on our unspent balance because we get to reclaim that authority. So all of this paints a picture that we are pretty much where we forecast to be, looking at that $6.9 million, just under $7 million unspent balance at the end of the year, growing to 11, then 14.6, 16.6, 17.6, before we get into 2030 when we do start to see that decline. One thing I do want to quickly address is assumptions as it relates to this for enrollment. We did use our enrollment projections, and so that averages out to about a 0.4% decline per year over the 5 years of this forecast. So this is based upon an assumption that our enrollment is going to decline. It's also based upon an assumption of 2% SSA. So we're assuming a fairly low level. Obviously, if we get additional information that would lower or raise that, we'll adjust. But at this point, that's the guidance that we have. Happy to address any questions.
Thank you. Directors?
Thank you for the presentation, Adam. 100% followed all of it, like I always do. When you say you used our enrollment projection assumptions, I seem to recall that we had a low, a high, and a best. Do you use the best?
I use the one that's labeled recommended. Yep.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
question.
Other directors?
Adam, I just have sorry I didn't forward this question earlier, and it just kind of occurred to me right now. What would you say has helped the growth in the unspent balance? And we were very concerned about it being in the year. I know that we had the student increase, but it seems like it's growing at a rate that's not the only item alone that is causing this growth.
Yeah, so one thing that really did show up, and I think that as we worked through budget reduction plans, it feels like years ago, I guess, it's a certain way. But as we worked through those, I think that we were pretty clear throughout that we were trying to give as accurate as possible of forecasts, but also fairly conservative forecasts for what savings we were actually going to achieve. I think by and large, we were able to achieve more savings, whether that was with our mid-year staff, where we had certain positions we didn't fill and we moved them, whether that was looking at positions that, we could, through attrition no longer have within the system. I think we were able to save more than what we had projected. And so that led to the roughly $3.3 million unspent balance in this year. And then beyond that, the effect is largely cumulative. So again, we're looking at, each time I plug a savings into my forecast tool, I'm using a pretty conservative estimate, unless I can be exact. I'm using a pretty conservative estimate of what that savings is going to be, and I always try to err on that side of it. And so I think, that's kind of the effect of both. We got off to a better start by achieving more savings than what we originally thought we might, and then it becomes a cumulative effect, and we've been able to continue that to an extent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? As always, thank you so much for
Thank you.
such a detailed report. Next up is our cell phone policy update. And without further ado, or Superintendent Degner, did you want to say a couple of words before we kick it off?
I'm not sure I do, but there's a thing about groups, like you should end how you start, and it feels like this was an issue we started the year with, and so we're kind of ending and closing out the year with a report back to you on this. We'd presented some data at one point here towards the conclusion, but we have some more results to share back with you, and Lucas and Brady are going to do that here for us this evening. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for the pressure. Superintendent Degner, Board of Directors, thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to share kind of the hard work that's been put in by our staff, our students, and our families as we implemented our new policy beginning January 20th. So the presentation itself in Board Docs has a ton of data, so we're not going to go through all of it with you tonight. We would be here for quite a while, but in the appendix of the presentation, you do see all the data that was asked for us to bring back to all of you. So just kind of the executive summary of what the data will show when you look at it is kind of the implementation metrics that the infractions continue to decline throughout each week of the policy. That other data points will need longitudinal studies, and I'll kind of go through that during the additional success metrics that we laid out during some of our planning meetings. The student survey responses was one of the things that we were asked to do after the last presentation, and what you'll see from there is that the policy is being implemented consistently across, that students were provided adequate training with that, but that we did see, based upon the results of the students, little change in students' behavior based upon their perception, and then the plurality of responses indicate that the policy was effective. We also did a follow-up survey with our support staff, and kind of the summary of those responses was adequate training and support was provided to staff members. That future preferences for those staff members would include email or all staff meetings that they're part of for any changes or any additional things with our policy. And that seniority that their staff members that had more longevity within our district, we saw similar responses as far as with the training and support that was provided to them than with our newer staff members. So the objectives tonight, we'll go through the secondary data, very similar format that we laid out the first time. Then we'll go through our follow-up the staff survey as well as our student survey, then any questions or discussion items that you all have. So last time we looked at, I think, the first 9 weeks. So obviously, this was all the way up until the final week of the school year in order to get this presented to you. But again, compared to our week one with 434, the last full week of school year, we had 85. So again, you'll see that downward trend of our data, which is exactly what we wanted to see with our data. And one of the things I did when I highlighted this was the average, not only the average per week of the entire secondary, middle school, and high school, but we also separated out by middle school and high school. And one of the things I wanted to make sure that we highlighted with this was each week, and some weeks had more minutes than others. So in order for accurate data, we based upon the number of infractions based upon the number of instructional minutes per week. So again, there was consistent number of minutes that we tried to lay out with the number of infractions. So again, this data is highlighted just like the last one that we saw a downward trend of our infractions pretty much from week 1 to week 18 as we started to see some things plateau because the data, it could go down from there, but, we tended to see and we expected to see still violations occur within our buildings. The next few slides, again, similar format to what you've seen before. This is just the breakdown throughout all students 6 through 12. Again, just under 8,100 students. The breakdown of students with anywhere from 1 to 6+ violations. Again, we saw the majority of our students had one violation or only one violation or fewer, which is great. That means students after the first time learn their lesson and learn the policies a little bit more thoroughly after a conversation with an administrator or a staff member. So we started to see the less infractions after that first violation. This is the exact same data, just broken down by building. So again, you'll see highlighted students 1 through 6+ violations. And again, very similar fashion across all of our buildings. Students after that first violation got the message, got the learning that was needed, and refrained from having their cell phone out during the instructional time, according to the policy. What these next slides show is kind of success metrics based upon some other districts that have had similar policies. So some things that we take a look at, and this first slide shows the tardy rate by level. If you remember back to that executive summary, longitudinal study is going to be needed for this. So we took a look at pre-January 20th to post-January 20th from this school year. And one of the things I wanted to make sure, that graph maybe wouldn't have shown us very much if we didn't compare it to previous years. So what I tried to do is take a look at that same time frame from the previous school year as well. So what you'll see when you take a look at these next few slides is we tend to see with the tardy and the absences, while it may have gone up in some instances after January 20th, I would make a pretty safe assumption that's a pretty strong pattern we see within every school year. But what we did see was a lower total over the total number, a better tardy rate, both middle school and high school compared to last year, both in tardies and absences in the coming slide. I also want to highlight, and it's pretty amazing with some of the data that we're going to see here with middle school. When we took a look at the data last year, this was 7th and 8th grade only. And then this year we're adding, nearly 1,200 new students into the middle school. So while the data may show less totals and better totals, that's also adding in a number of more students. So again, kudos to our building staff for the hard work that they're doing. So just like the tardy rate, it broke the data down, the same thing with absences. So you'll see last year up on the top there, and then the lower level has the 24-25 school year. Again, pre-January 20th as well as post-January 20th, you'll see those. Again, I think it's important that obviously the absence rate, while it goes up post-January 20th, when you take a look at it and try to compare it to the 23-24 school year, you'll see that there's a decrease. So there's a better attendance rate with the 24-25 school year. Some of the things we also took a look at was behavior reports. The next thing that you'll see is also the circulation in our libraries. So the behavior reports, you'll see the light blue number there is January 20th. Again, before January 20th, the dark blue is after January 20th. And you'll see, again, the breakdown of the 23-24 school year, as well as the 24-25 school year. So again, I'm pretty happy to see that it doesn't matter what school year, both last year and this year, we saw a decrease in the number of behavior reports after January 20th. And there's a pretty drastic number of totals. Not sure what that noise is. It's telling me to hurry up. I'm sorry. My bad. We see a pretty drastic number of total behavior reports, so that's good news overall in our system. And then lastly was library circulation. So Lisa Petrie was very proud to share this data with me. Especially at the middle school, we saw a significant increase in the number of library books that were checked out. She credits that to the work that her team is doing, try to get into the classrooms to get more students in the library. But you'll see a drastic increase in the middle schools, and then you'll see an increase in the number of books that were checked out. Even though we didn't increase the number of circulations post-January 20th, we did see an increase in the totals. So again, that was the data just based upon what we've seen before, in addition to those additional success metrics. And I think that's something we'll want to continue to look at, given that we don't have a huge sample size with just 2 school years.
All right, I'd like to just first give some credit to Lucas for his leadership on this. It's been a long and winding road a little bit this year, but Executive Director Potajic did a fantastic job of bringing people together, and I really appreciate the chance to work with him. So well done. We did want to ask the students, as you requested, similar questions that we asked the staff when we checked in with them in terms of consistency of implementation, whether they received the right amount of training and support, what engagement looked like or changed. And we had a healthy response. As you can see, over half of our student body responded. The takeaways, there is a consistent implementation of the policy. You saw that across the different schools. We were proud of that. There was adequate training provided to students. For us, I think probably as adults in the buildings, those were 2 of our high points in looking at it. In terms of effectiveness, there's a plurality who indicate that it is effective. There's a little bit of a mix on that. And then the students' perceptions of their own levels of engagement or the behavior of their classmates was a little bit mixed. which there could probably a lot of reasons for that I'm not a statistician to know well enough to know, but I could speculate. So if you take a look, there's the consistently and very, very consistently, somewhat consistently. I think that's important for us as adults when we implement a new policy, is to make sure we're doing it with fidelity and that we provide the appropriate amount of training, which you see a very high level of support for that particular item. So I think, shout out to the buildings and to all the teams there for doing those two things very well. In terms of the effectiveness, again, you get a plurality showing it's very effective or somewhat effective. Healthy number there on the neutral, and then, a smattering otherwise. There's probably a lot of emotions of students around the effectiveness. I don't know that it's their favorite thing that you all have done as a board. I think I'm safe in saying that, but I think that I would tether back and anchor back to what the adults were seeing and the staff, and that was high levels of engagement and very different student behaviors. And so I think that when we look at this, I think it was important to give the student perspective, but I think if you look back at your staff data, I would say that holds a lot of weight in my mind. When we looked at support staff, we wanted to make sure, and we were targeted on this. So these are support staff. This would be like engagement intervention strategists, paraeducators, hall monitors, those folks. We wanted to make sure they had the tools necessary to implement this. So these are not classroom teachers. And we had a good response. Right. What we did see is that the training and support that they received as their top priority, which was to receive emails, is what in fact they did receive. That's what they got. Their second choice on both training and support was to have attendance at an all-staff meeting. That's probably where we saw the little bit of a gap, and I think that was why it was important that we did this targeted follow-up. What you saw in the responses is they most often had discussions with colleagues. So I think something for our buildings as a takeaway is that making sure to build in those all-staff meetings, particularly mid-year for ongoing support, is going to be something that we'll look to do next year. So if you have any questions or discussions, yeah.
Both for a detailed presentation. I would open the floor up to directors for comments or questions.
Well, I just have a comment. When I retired from the district 3 years ago, cell phone use was certainly on the rise. And I mean, there were definitely days when I thought there is nothing we can do about this. And so I just applaud your efforts. And I think a lot of it is the collaboration that happened with the planning and the team that made worked through the policy and found something that worked for all of us. And I've heard very good feedback about it from people, so I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I appreciate you all coming back, sharing with us the data and information, and I can attest that we are not heroes among our students. I've heard loud and clear from them, but there are a handful that appreciate it and can see the good that it is doing. So thank you to the team for carrying it out and staying on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to say I really appreciate your bringing this analysis to us at the end of 1 year, which is, I think, one of our requests.
Yeah.
And the timeliness is very much appreciated.
Thank you. Next up, that takes us to our action items. First up is the 800 series building and sites. Is there any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the 800 series policy.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the,
900 series.
Yeah, 900 series, the school district community, something that glitched on me.
Relations.
Okay. Is there any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Move that we approve the 900 series policies.
Second.
All right. Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Really likes those 900s.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's.
right,
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is the policy 210.2 regular meeting. Is there any questions or comments from directors? I would just like to remind the public that if this passed tonight, this will be our only meeting in June, and we will not return until July 22nd. So the schedule would be our second board meeting in July.
Director Malone, this is, our President Malone, I'm sorry. This is in perpetuity, right? Or is it
Yes,
just- Yeah,
because we can always call a special meeting if needed in either month. There any questions, comments from board? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve policy 210.2 regular meetings.
Second.
All right, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Next up is policy 704.4, the gifts and grants. Is there any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move that we approve policy 704.4 gifts, grants, and bequests.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is Facility Master Plan 2.3. Are there any questions or discussions or comments from directors? Hearing none, is there a motion?
I move approval of Facilities Master Plan 2.3.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Abraham, Eastham, Istone, Malone, and Williams voting yea, and Director Lingo voting nay.
Thank you. And our final action item for tonight is the Superintendent Contract 2025 through 2028. Are there any questions or comments from directors? Hearing none, I do just want to say, Superintendent Degner, thank you for your continued leadership and service to the district as well as the board.
I would also just add that we're not allowed to make evaluative comments in public for the public at home, and that's why I'm not saying how much I value your contribution to our district.
Well done. All right.
Thank you for that brilliant.
Yeah. With that, is there a motion regarding the superintendent contract?
I move to approve the superintendent contract for 2025 through 2028.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up takes us to our director liaison report, and directors were busy this past cycle. I don't know if directors would like to highlight any of the activities that they took part in. I just want to say, well done to our administrators with Transitions, Take, City, West, and Liberty, and our online program for the amazing graduation celebration ceremonies that they held for their students. Majority of us attended all of them. So we got to see a vast variety of traditions across the district and celebrations, and they are always, that weekend is always really special for me. So thank you to our building administrations.
Yeah, I would like to second President Malone's comments too. I really appreciate the work that the staff and the administration put into making those celebrations a real celebration. And also, I like to say from my perspective, a reason for being on the school board is to attend this commencement ceremonies at the end of the year for all of our schools. That'll really greatly help your perspective, so.
That's our payment, so thank you.
I would like to say that I got to attend the first inaugural run of the Flood Heroes, and it was fun to see some of the things that were going on. Like Kyle Mara had his flood thing video that I'm glad it was fourth grade and not kindergartners there because there would have been nightmares, but that's a different story. But watching some of the different safety things, the rescues, and just being able to see the center be utilized by students was a nice change of pace for me. And just like Charlie said, the graduation's just fantastic. And to see some of the relationships in the audience and between the teachers. I mean, I can think of watching Tate and watching some of the teachers out there just tears streaming down because it was the blood, sweat, and tears to get some of those students, and even at our other high schools as well, through the finish line.
Right.
So, thank you.
Oh, I did want to say that I did promise one administration team that if we ever came up with an award, it would be Best Dress, because Wes was pretty creative with their coordinating dresses that their assistant principals wore. So did take notice, as well as several people in the audience. So if that ever is created, we owe them an award for this year. So any other comments from directors? Hearing none, that takes us to agenda setting. And for those in attendance and following along on Zoom and watching later, it should be noted that these meetings will be held in our new boardroom located at the Center for Innovation at 2255 North Dubuque Road. Did I get that right? Okay, because I've only been there a handful of times, so want to make sure I got that right. The times will remain the same, and our boardroom is on the second floor. There is an elevator as well as stairs. So again, all these meetings will take place on July 22nd in our new boardroom. First up is policy and governance. They will be reviewing policy 200.3R1, responsibilities of board of directors and extra service activities policies.
And I would like to remind all the directors, the 203R1, we have plenty, that's not time sensitive, so we have plenty of time to work through that policy. But the extra service activities policy is a policy that we do anticipate voting on in the July meeting. And so if you have, which is the meeting right after that P&G committee. So if you have strong feelings or thoughts or input that you would like to give to the extra service activities policy, feel free to email me ahead of time. Feel free to email Deputy Superintendent Ramey. It's probably going to be more productive if you email Chase instead of me, because I'm just going to forward your email to Chase. But that is time sensitive, so please, I just want to make sure that that is on everybody's radar as something that we need to get voted on on time.
Thank you, Director Williams. And immediately following policy and governance will be our regular meeting. And right now, I'm not seeing a whole lot, but I know Superintendent Degner have our list of items.
That's right. We do have a list, President Malone. So right now, we kind of have 4 things in the hopper for that meeting. One would be our operations annual report that would get delivered as it always does every July. We'd like to try to be back to you with a legal and legislative update about the legislation that will be impacting our school year. That's a big part of our team's work over the summer, is to take the laws that have been passed and work towards implementation for the next school year. So we'd like to do that at the end of July. If it doesn't happen in that July meeting, we would do it in the first August meeting. We also have an item in our parking lot about restorative justice and discipline. I think from Director Finch's comments there, it's kind of related to how we address conflict in the building and what some of our practices are there. So we'll be back with an update on that. And then we will also have the audit delivered at that July meeting for 7/22. So those are the 4 things we have right now, and that's the FY23 audit that'll occur there. So if there's other things that do come up after this evening, we could talk about, put them in the parking lot in our one-to-one check-ins, or we can see if it makes sense to add to that July meeting.
Great. Any questions?
If a past majority of us are planning on attending the P&G committee, should we be making it a work session, or how does that?
Nope,
Okay,
it still will be
just-
conducted as a policy and governance meeting. And they will decide how interaction will work, but it's still a committee meeting.
Really, the only difference is that only 3 of us are going to vote on the minutes from the last meeting.
Right.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll be the same.
Be exciting.
Yep.
And 2 parking lots. One of the things that I've had a couple people reach out to me since the AI purchase from Google, just kind of maybe an update on AI on that front and overall in the district. And since we're going down this pathway of FMP 2.3, kind of just taking a look at student participation with an eye towards equity, like, is our student participation in free and reduced price lunch and race ethnicity matching our buildings and where we're at there? And what we could do to improve, or if we're stellar, then that's great. So that's.
So you'd
No,
like some
no.
information on participation and then kind of demographics behind that participation too, Director Lingo? Sure.
Not limited to sports, but fine arts.
Yep.
The clubs and all the.
We have some of that data available. That's some of what Lucas was referencing, so that should be an easy one to turn around. So we might be able to do that right away in July. The AI one's timely too, obviously, with the community commenter here tonight wondering what we're doing, and we're proud of a lot of the work we're doing there. So that would be one that we'll work with Mr. Fenstermaker on when he can help present that.
If you need to balance it out throughout the fall, that.
Yeah, got it.
Great. Since there's nothing else and we're at the end, I would entertain a motion to adjourn until July 22nd.
Motion to adjourn until July 22nd, 2025.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Please have a safe couple of weeks, and we'll see you at the new spot in July. Thank you.